Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome NBC Connecticut Emmy Award-winning news anchor, Keisha Grant.
Just like that, I feel like I'm working, but really I'm not, because we're gonna have some fun this afternoon. Good afternoon, everybody. Oh, you know what? Come on now. This is our first time back in a couple of years, first time live, and we can do so much better than that. So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna give it to you one more time while we give folks a little chance to make their way to their seats and settle down, find their seats, and give me their full attention. And we're gonna try that one more time. Good afternoon. That's what we like to hear. Ladies and gentlemen, please, as you make your way to your seats and you begin to settle down, I do want to thank you. I want to thank you for being here this afternoon with us. And go ahead, talk amongst yourselves, but I will wait for you because I do love full attention. It's why we're all here today, so let's not waste anybody's time. I won't waste yours and you won't waste mine. We've got some wonderful things to talk about. So let's get to it. It's going to be a wonderful afternoon. I am so thrilled to be here with you, as you heard. My name is Keisha Grant. I am evening news co-anchor with NBC Connecticut. And today it is my pleasure to serve for you as your mistress of ceremony for the 27th In the Company of Women Luncheon. It is so great to be live. Give yourselves a round of applause. You know, I gotta say, for a couple of years, we did our thing. We went the virtual route. We did what we had to do to show up, to be present. And the virtual space is fantastic. We still got the job done, but there is nothing like being with you in the flesh, being here live. There is nothing like being able to look out into the crowd and see so many wonderful faces and see people's smiles, make that eye connection, that human connection. If the last 2 years has taught us anything, let it be that you cannot replace that human connection. We need this. We need to break bread and to be able to say hello to one another and smile. So I'm so glad that you're here doing exactly that today. I'm so glad that you were present. Thank you. Our theme this year is Our Learners Today Become Leaders Tomorrow. I have welcomed you. I've told you how great it is to be here and to have you in this wonderful room, and what a great afternoon we're going to have. And we're going to get into our program. You should know that we have kept the number of attendees this year intentionally low to allow us to keep some distance. We are, after all, still in a pandemic. But we do want you to know that we are sold out today. And so give yourselves a round of applause. You got that hot ticket to the room. You know, today is not only a celebration of coming back together, of being present, of being together once again, first time in 2 years live, but it is also going to be a day of acknowledgement and a day of appreciation. And just in case you haven't figured it out from my words, I am appreciative of each and every one of you. I am so glad that you chose to spend this afternoon with us here today. Thank you. We'd like to acknowledge the dignitaries in the room. Lieutenant Governor Susan Bysiewicz. I believe she was here. If she isn't still here, she was here. She is here currently, and I do apologize. I've got bright lights, Lieutenant Governor, but Lieutenant Governor Susan Bysiewicz is in the room. State Treasurer Sean Wooden was here earlier. Commissioner Beth Bai. State Senator Douglas McCrory, State Representative Bobby Gibson, Representative Tammy Exum, CEO of Connecticut Valley Hospital, Lakeisha Hyatt, City Councilwoman Tiana Hercules, and Town Council Member Suzette DeBeetham Brown. Let's give them all a round of applause. Thank you for joining us. Anyone who I've left off of the list, I do apologize, but we're appreciative of each and every one for being here today. Thank you also to presenting media sponsors Comcast, NBC Connecticut, and Telemundo. Thank you to our champion sponsors, Travelers, Last Parking, and Voices of Women of Color. Thank you, supporter sponsor, Landmark Partner, and Ayers Company. Thank you also to partner sponsors, The Hartford, Hoffman Lexus, Pratt & Whitney, and Day Pitney. We are grateful to media sponsors, Connecticut Public Television, PBS, and WNPR, Hartford Business Journal, and Inquiring News. Let's give them a round of applause as well. A big thank you to all of our sponsors. To view the complete list of sponsors, please see the screens set up in the room to my right and my left. Also, they're listed in your program booklet. Your support is testimony to your confidence in the programs and services YWCA Hartford Region provides. Please, let's give all of today's sponsors one more big round of applause. And you know what? I want us to stay connected. We talked about that connection and how important it is, especially after 2 years. We know what it's like not to have this one-on-one connection. YWCA Hartford Region is on LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Saw so many of you taking so many wonderful photos today. Do share those pictures from today and be sure to tag us. YWCA Hartford Region's mission statement is dedicated to eliminating racism, empowering women, and promoting peace, justice, freedom, and dignity for all. We need your support in order for YWCA Hartford Region to continue its amazing programs and services. It's so important. Our goal for today is to raise $25,000, and I am so thrilled to report we already have over $10,000 donated. So please, yes, give that a round of applause, right? Please consider a gift today. For your inconvenience, there are 3 ways that you can give right now. It's really easy to do. First, you'll see at the center of the table, there's a QR code there. All you have to do is scan it with your phone, just open up the camera. Second, there are donation cards and envelopes on your table where you can write a check or provide your credit card information. Raise your hand and staff will retrieve the envelopes from the table immediately following the program. So easy to give, and you can help us meet that goal that we have today, $25,000. Finally, you can text the phrase YWCA 2022 to the number 243-725. It's there on the screens, 243-725, to get a link sent directly to your phone to donate. So I'm going to thank you in advance for your support. I know that we can meet that fundraising goal today. Ladies and gentlemen, I'd love to draw your attention now to the screens for a very special video.
There is a saying, when we make play the foundation of learning, we teach the whole child. Play is how children find meaning in an ever-changing world. For the past 75 years, YWCA Hartford Region has been a haven, a home away from home, and a reliable and responsible partner for families to entrust with their precious children. Serving children from 6 weeks to 5 years old, we provide affordable, high-quality early education at our 4 Early Learning Centers, or ELCs as they're called. They're located in Hartford, West Hartford, East Hartford, and South Windsor. However, our ELCs are more than bricks and mortar. Within them, we house an amazing staff of child education providers who are compassionate, creative, extremely patient, and care very deeply about the work that they do. The passion they have for teaching is endless. Even with the youngest, our teachers allow them to take control of their learning at their own pace.
Paper. Paper. Wanna go get the black? Get the black. Give it to Maria. Go give the black to Maria. No, you don't want it? Baby. That's a baby. Wanna do the pegs?
From language development and reading basics to developing their motor skills through playtime, our ELCs help to bridge social-emotional learning gaps that prepare children for kindergarten and beyond. Our team takes a holistic approach for a child's cognitive and physical needs to establish a base for lifelong learning and well-being. Our ELCs are a place where culturally diverse children come together like a family. They laugh and shed tears, and our staff is there to comfort them. They go above and beyond. In 2020, the COVID-19 pandemic had a devastating impact on early learning centers across the nation. Connecticut was hard hit, and so were we. The pandemic forced many working parents, especially mothers, out of jobs. They had to stay home to teach and care for their children. Although now many parents are back to work, the impact of many months with underemployment or no employment was dire. Our staff sacrificed and, yes, suffered the impact of being out of work too. It was a tough time for everyone. We actually refer to our ELC staff as our early learning first responders because they had to be there to support people that had to work. Yet through it all, we have maintained an incredible group of disciplined, dedicated, and determined professionals who operate daily as a family.
I absolutely love the YWCA, and I love the empowered people that do work here and how it has empowered me to become one myself. I thank all the people here, and I do work with so many empowered women.
We are immensely proud of the education we offer, and we know the children they teach daily have a better head start in life. Our teachers embed in them a passion for learning. At the heart of our ELC is love. We are an extension of the parents and guardians who bring their children to us every morning. Our team is a part of the village that helps raise their children. Their work remains in the hearts and minds of those they touch, and we are so grateful to them for consistently caring for our future. It is the YWCA Hartford Region Early Learning Center staff who truly make possible the theme for today's luncheon. Our learners today become leaders tomorrow.
Got me upside down, spinning around you. Wanna taste the clouds, dance with the moon. Take a trip around your body. Boy, I love the way you got me.
We are back. We are back. Welcome, everyone. So good to be back in person. So happy that so many of you came out today to support us in our work. And that video, aren't those kids precious? Keisha, you rearranged some life things to be here for us today, and we really appreciate that. Thank you so much. Thank you, Comcast, for helping us produce the video. Thank you to all of our sponsors. Again, we couldn't do it without you, and we couldn't do it without the people who are in the room today. Last but nowhere close to least, I want to hear the table captains, because the table captains have been doing this for 27 years for this luncheon, so thank you. So I'm going to take us on a trip down memory lane that seemed so long ago, but really it wasn't. And it was March 16th of 2020. And I remember this day so vividly because it's the day that Peggy Atherley and Kathy Ziner and Carolyn Menez and others, we stood around and said, this thing is serious. We are 3 weeks from our luncheon, Everything is shutting down around us. There's no way to go forward. We're thankful for the sponsors that year who had already made their contributions, who said, don't worry about it. Thank you for allowing us to use those dollars for our programs. Shortly after the shutdown, I'm emotional about my staff, I'll tell you that. OEC, Office of Early Childhood Commissioner, Beth Bai, phoned our then Director of Early Learning and School Age Programs, Jill Marini. Shout out Beth Bai, shout out Jill Marini. And she had a question that seemed simple on the surface but was very complicated. Jill, will the YW reopen Growing Tree in Hartford so that the children of the medical personnel, frontline staff, would have someplace safe to leave their children while they did this important work? And bear in mind, none of us knew quite what this was at that time. And of course, Jill, what do you think? And Jill said, yeah, but we have to get the staff. And let me tell you that staff stepped up. Staff stepped up, showed up, rose to the challenge of not only taking care of the children. Now imagine this, trying to explain to toddlers why they can't play together. Doing the work of keeping everybody separated. Taking temperatures when children were dropped off, temperatures at the middle of the day, temperatures at the end of the day. Augmenting what was already being done by a cleaning service that was cleaning every day, scrubbing, changing gloves, changing masks. Everything they could do to keep the children and families safe, but also to keep themselves safe. And it wasn't easy. I think we all know that. But I also think that they knew that this is a calling. Because if you care for children, that's not just a job. If you care for children, really care for children, if you're not in one of our early learning centers, you're in somebody else's center somewhere doing this important work. And so today is as much about the importance of early childhood education, how important, like, how cool is it? Sonia Manzano, we've got Maria from Sesame Street in the house, y'all. And we know she's so much more than that, but that's how we all met you. Thank you for coming. So what I want you to do is first know the leadership and understand that in that role as site managers, that they often are called to step in, right? Because we have to be in ratio. And yes, we stay in ratio. And sometimes it was running from one place to the next. Jill, it was juggling. Tina, it was juggling because you couldn't commingle groups. So I'll start with you. I'm going to ask the leadership team for early learning to come to the stage. I'm going to start with Tina Gladden, who is the Director of Early Learning and School Age Programs, and she is the interim site manager for Growing Tree. Robin Bucky, who's the site manager for South Windsor. Ann Hort, who's the site manager for East Hartford. and Lourdes Ufret, who is the site manager for Elmwood, located in West Hartford. Now, please acknowledge Rhonda Knight, who was with us for about almost 5 years, who just recently left us, but she certainly was leading at Growing Tree during this time. Lisa Toomey, who was the former East Hartford site manager, but good news, she's still with us. She's our Associate Director of HR and Training. So now, I want to see our early learning staff. I want to see your faces. I want everybody else to see your faces. This could not have been done without you. What you do every day, what you've done every day. Get on your feet and recognize. Come on. We thank you. We need you. We appreciate you. We will rally for better pay and better conditions for you. Thank you so much for all you do. This is why we need your support. This is why we continue to need your support. The 40 or some odd workers, heroes and sheroes that are seated in the audience, and this remarkable leadership team on the stage. One more time for them and for them. Thank you. Thank you. And remember, we need your support, they need your support, and our children need all of our support. Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, to introduce our keynote speaker, we welcome back to the stage Keisha Grant.
Feels like you've been using me.
Thank you so much, and what a pleasure it is to be able to introduce to you our keynote speaker. I've just got to say, Adrian, Miss Adrian, we go back a long time, and I'll tell you, feeling that emotion in your voice, feeling it from your heart, that is why we are all here today. That is why we choose to spend this afternoon with you and with the YWCA. So thank you. Thank you. Our keynote speaker. This has been such an amazing afternoon already. But boy, we get to hear from Maria, and I'm sorry to be so informal, but my children, ages 5 and 7, are in love with you, so allow me to mommy fangirl out up here. Sonia Manzano is a first-generation mainland Puerto Rican raised in the South Bronx. In the early 1970s, a scholarship took her to Carnegie Mellon University, where she participated in the creation of the Broadway hit Godspell. From there, she went on to affect the lives of millions of parents and children when she was offered the opportunity to create the role of Maria on Sesame Street. Ms. Manzano has received 15 Emmys for Sesame Street, 15. In addition, she received a Lifetime Achievement Emmy Award in 2016. Her book titles include No Dogs Allowed, A Box Full of Kittens, Miracle on 133rd Street, The Revolution of Evelyn Serrano, Becoming Maria, Love and Chaos in the South Bronx, and A World Together. Scholastic recently announced a new 4-book deal with Ms. Manzano. The first novel, Coming Up Cuban, will be published in spring of 2022. That's right now. Her new animated series, Alma's Way, It was on in my house this morning, in fact, before the kids went to school. It premiered on PBS on October 4th, 2021. Please welcome to the stage our 2022 In the Company of Women keynote speaker, the legendary Sonia Manzano.
Thank you so much for inviting me to your event. I, like many, am so tired of Zoom virtual conferences and meetings like that. I'm sick of addressing people wearing a beautiful shirt and with, you know, false eyelashes and makeup on my face, only to really be wearing shorts and sneakers from the waist down. It's very confusing, and I'm really glad that you having the courage and the enthusiasm to have this meeting in person. I love being in your presence. I had a very extra treat this morning. I was in the company of the Young Women Leadership Corps. Where are you? Yes. Yes, and we talked for quite a while, and I like to be in the presence of young children. And is this timer on or not? I'll leave it up to you. It's kind of distracting, but I don't know if it's on. Anyway, I was telling the young women that I do love to be in their presence because young people give me strength. I think that's why I've been on Sesame Street for so many years, because they are strong themselves, and young people are full of ideas. And meeting all of these young women in the Young Women Leadership Corps certainly gave me a moment to see the world through their eyes. And every generation sees the world slightly differently, and we often have to adjust to that. That little clip you saw of me on Sesame Street was my life. I mean, you know, I don't know how they could put 44 years on a show into a 2-minute clip, but there you are. You might remember some of it. Sometimes I have forgotten some of the moments that are on the show, but I'm just kidding. I almost remember every moment of the 44 years that I was on Sesame Street and my time there. I led a double life for 44 years, the real life of Sonia Manzano, wife, mother, actress, and author, and the fantasy life of Maria on Sesame Street, wife, mother, fix-it shop owner, toaster fixer. Of course, many of you are probably aware that I fixed the same toaster for 44 years. I mean, they never changed that prop. It was just, coming onto the scene at the fix-it shop, and there I am fixing a toaster. So I feel that my life and Maria's life kind of ran neck and neck. In the beginning, the private lives of us humans was really featured more than now. More than now, Sesame Street features a lot of the lives of the puppets. But at that time, humans were featured, so I was wooed and married, and I had a baby on the show. You know, when I think about it, we were like the first reality show without the whining. People were so convinced that everything they saw on Sesame Street was real, they thought that Emilio Delgado and I, who played Luis, were really married when we had the wedding and a sequence. And so much so that once Emilio and I were traveling, and a woman recognized us. And she got very excited, and she came up to us, and she thanked us. She said how wonderful it was for her children to see real love on Sesame Street. How wonderful that we shared our innermost feelings with her child. Well, we told her that we were not really married. The woman sucked in her breath and said, well, as long as you really love each other. So she was going to be determined to believe in the reality of our relationship on the show, no matter what. Children believe in Big Bird and Elmo and Oscar as much as they believed in my fictitious married. I remember once we had a 4-year-old visit the set, And the Big Bird suit comes in 2 pieces. And Carol Spinney, who plays Big Bird, who was like 75 at the time, took the top half of his suit off in front of this child. No worries, because the child turned to his mother and said, "Mommy, does Big Bird know there's a man in him?" Because this event is called "And I Am in the Company of Women," I want to tell you a little secret. For many years, we were criticized for not having a black or brown female monster on the show as popular as Grover or Cookie Monster. Here's why it was difficult for us. To have a compelling or interesting Muppet, its behavior has to be compulsive or obsessive. I mean, and neurotic, that helps as well. Grover's funny because he's neurotically helpful and he thinks he solves every problem and he always wants to be liked. Well, imagine a female or a black or brown Muppet monster who was always helpful and wanted to be liked. We would have been accused of showing those entities as shallow. More difficult would be having a female or a black or a brown Cookie Monster. If we showed a female monster girl eating cookies all the time, we would have been accused of showing girls with eating disorders. So we couldn't do that either. And we couldn't show a black or brown Muppet eating cookies all the time because it would have been read as slovenly behavior. So that kept us from doing what was right for a long time. Finally, we have a Latinx monster. Her name is Rosita. And the reason for her success is that there is a real Mexican actress underneath that turquoise fur. Her name is Carmen Ashbar. The minute I retired from Sesame Street, I received a Lifetime Achievement Award, and I should have retired earlier if I was going to get all of these awards. Still, I like to joke saying that I left the show because 44 years was long enough for me to wait for Oscar the Grouch to propose. Woman's got to do what a woman's got to do. Anyway, he was my favorite character. But you might wonder how I could have stayed on a show that lasts and lasts and lasts as long as Sesame Street has. How many ways can you count to 20? How many times can I correct Elmo and Big Bird about the very same things? Well, the reason I was able to stay on the show so long is that every generation of children gives you a new opportunity to do right by them, to do better, a better chance to get things right. And as I said before, every generation has a new set of needs. I want to tell you a bit about the origins of the show. It blasted out of the 1960s. America was a different place then. The times were turbulent. Very youth-driven, so youth-driven you didn't trust anybody over 35 years old. Technology was in the dark ages, no DVD, no internet, no on-demand. We couldn't refer to Big Bird's beautiful yellow colors because not everybody had a color television set. The country was going through great social upheaval, marked by the civil rights movement. We were influenced by Martin Luther King Jr. as well as Malcolm X. Everybody wanted change. Everybody had a platform. Women wanted to join the workforce for the first time, and this was unheard of. This was shocking. They would go downtown and burn their bras in protest. I suppose now we'd burn our Spanxes. But I don't think they burn. I think they melt. To illustrate how everybody had a political platform, I thought Emilio Delgado, who ended up playing Luis, my husband, was an activist before I realized he was an actor, because as a supporter for Cesar Chavez Farm Workers Organization, he would pin a boycott grapes on everybody he met. It wasn't until we started to rehearse that I realized that he was a performer and not an activist. Even President Johnson was affected by the idealistic times. He talked about creating the Great Society, which paved the way for Head Start, the organization that helped us see children, the first one, in a different light. The proposal for the work for Sesame Street, which is what they write up to get the money from the foundations, states the following, and I quote, "It is becoming obvious that no one knows what the world is going to be like when the time comes for the younger to live in it. So perhaps the kindest thing we can do is to try not to burden them with the quaint details of today's beliefs and customs, but just attempt to get across a few principles of how things interact, what is basic in human life, and to acquaint them with as thorough a cross-section as possible of person, places, and things as they now stand. After this, we can only give them a pat on the shoulder and wish them well," unquote. The idealistic idea behind Sesame Street was that with improved self-esteem and armed with cognitive skills, underprivileged children could start school on the same level as their middle-class peers, giving them a chance of succeeding in our society. I'll never forget the first time I saw Sesame Street. I walked into the Student Union of Carnegie Mellon University, where I was attending, and there on a black and white television set was a very young, very bald, very thin James Earl Jones reciting the alphabet, you know, in that very deliberate manner. A, B, C, as the letters flashed over his head. Well, I was stunned. At first, I thought it was a show that taught lip reading. Then they cut to Susan and Gordon, this cheerful, warm, urban, black, African-American couple who were so real. And I was stunned. Let me remind you that in 1969, you did not see people of color on television. And if you did, they weren't the cute Susan and Gordon that I saw on Sesame Street. And this had such meaning for me. I'm Puerto Rican, born and raised in a poor neighborhood in the South Bronx in the 50s, and I watched a lot of television growing up. And never seeing anybody who looked like me or talked like me or lived in the same neighborhood that I lived in made me feel invisible. Absolutely invisible, to the point where on some level I know that I wondered what I was going to contribute to a society that didn't see me. I mean, people would say, "What are you going to be when you grew up?" And you go, because there was nothing, if you can't see it, you can't be it. I didn't see teachers or doctors or bus drivers. Anyway, I did wonder what I was going to contribute to a society that was blind to my existence. My retirement from the show prompted many personal questions, a recurring one that I sing to myself. Can you tell me how I got to Sesame Street in the first place? Good luck, good timing, being in the right place at the right time, of social and cultural change. I don't know, but if you had suggested to me that I was going to end up being a well-known personality or being on television when I was a kid, I would have suggested you commit yourself to the nearest insane asylum. That's how crazy that idea was. As I pondered my childhood, I wrote a memoir entitled Becoming Maria, Love and Chaos in the South Bronx. And there's a picture of it. That's not me. That's the cover of the book. But that could be me. We used to go downstairs like that in buildings like that, carrying our bultos, which is what we call those book carriers. We'll go on to the next picture now, and I'll show you pictures of my family. That's an adorable me in the upper left-hand corner. My family at an amusement park, and it must have been Sunday, because since we came from church, we stayed dressed up, even though we went to an amusement park. My mother in Puerto Rico, my dad, and I think I'm a flower girl in that wedding, in a wedding down in that dress. There I am as a cool 10-year-old at a park bench. I thought I was so hot in that. I remember specifically thinking I looked so cool in that skirt. My brother up there, Enrique, and he was a kid, and my sister and I were at a picture in Coney Island. I actually remember wearing that bathing suit, and that grouchy expression on my sister's face, she still has that same expression. Let's show everyone the next photo, please. That's me as graduating the High School of Performing Arts, me at my cousin's wedding with those terrible 60s curls. I think we made a hole in the ozone layer. We would put hairspray on until we choked, not realizing how dangerous it was. And that's me in my junior high school graduating class. I'm in the corner there, and everybody wore their hair in a French twist because everybody wanted to look like Kim Novak in those days. Next picture, please. This picture really fascinated me. That's my mother in Puerto Rico, a place I had never been to. And I'm struck by how beautifully she's dressed. She looks like Clark Gable is going to come pick her up in his roadster, her little peplum dress. But I wondered about those kids in the door. Who were they? Why weren't they in school? How could my mother be so dressed up and look in such a mean-looking place? And then that's my little sister. She was born in Puerto Rico. And what she's standing on is covered sewage. And they would tell me that children would fall into the sewage and drown, and this is the terrible poverty that they had escaped. But then it was so confusing because my parents would talk about this terrible poverty, and then they would bring out guitars and sing about how beautiful Puerto Rico was. You know, Rafael Hernandez songs, and you know, the island was so beautiful. So I'm thinking, which is it, folks? You know, is it a good place or a bad place? It was very confusing. Next picture, please. Oh, well, that's the end of my family photos, and that's once again the name of the book. But unfortunately, the life that I led in the Bronx encompasses or was ruled by domestic violence. My parents migrated from Puerto Rico after World War II and found their way to the mainland, like many others, to escape that poverty that I was just describing to you and find a decent way to live. My father worked on roofs. My mother was a seamstress. And they began or continued their struggle. They struggled with the system. They struggled with speaking English. But mostly they struggled with each other. They struggled so much the term for the struggle, la lucha, peppered their everyday conversation. If they met somebody in the street, they'd say, here we are in la lucha. They answered the phone, hola, la lucha. I thought it was a greeting of some sort. Anyway, as I said, I witnessed their behavior, their violent behavior towards each other as I tried to connect the dots and make sense about life around me. Kids find a way of comforting themselves. I look to television for order and comfort. I long for the lifestyles I saw in Father Knows Best and Leave It to Beaver. I lost myself in those stories, in any stories that I came across, and I found sanctuary in school, where there was opportunities to excel in. I hated summer vacations. I cheered the day I had to go to summer school to get out of the house. When I went to grade school, there was a tracking system in place, and that meant if you were smart, you were in the smartest first grade class, second grade class, so on and so forth. If you were challenged, if you didn't speak English, if you had a disability, you were in the low achievers class, and unfortunately, you stayed there for your whole educational career. Well, I was always in the #1 high-achieving class. I had a very easy time in the South Bronx, and I did very well. But very little was expected of me. All I had to do was show up and not cause anybody any trouble. If you weren't a felon, you passed. Junior high school was the same way. My girlfriends and I would give ourselves manicures in our desks, wave our fingers around, and still answer questions and ace it. Well, around that time, a teacher told me about the High School of Performing Arts, which is the famed school. There was a TV show and there was a movie about it. Well, it's a specialized New York house school. You get in by auditioning. Never heard of it. I went. If I would have been happy to stay in my neighborhood. But this teacher insisted I audition. I did. I got accepted, and I was met with my first education gap experience. I went from being an A-plus student in the South Bronx to a C-minus student at the High School of Performing Arts. Why? Because all those other kids had been to better elementary schools in better neighborhoods than I had been, and we're all in New York City, so it's under the same curriculum. Most of them came from middle-class homes. I was not prepared. I couldn't compete with their basic skills. I was going to school all of a sudden with kids who knew how to debate. I couldn't tell the difference between a debate and an argument, a fight. I had a hard time participating in class discussions. I only knew how to memorize, not think. I couldn't compete socially. These kids went to Europe every year. I had hardly been out of the Bronx. Maintaining a C average took all my energy, and it's very hard to get those elementary skills when you're going through puberty as well, and your hormones are raging. I felt stupid, though I knew I wasn't stupid. Probably that's where the impulse for the show I created for PBS, it's called Alma's Way, came up. And there's a picture of Alma's Way. It's a show kind of based on my life in the South Bronx, only currently. There's Alma. She lives by the number 6 train, which I lived by. And the show teaches kids that they could think, even if they find themselves in the situation that I did, drowning in a special school like the High School of Performing Arts, not thinking I was smart even though I knew I was. Alma's Way shows that kids have the capacity of thinking no matter what. Every show has a little thought bubble, and we see Alma's thought process. So this show is going to show preschoolers that there's exuberance and excitement in the capacity of being able to put 2 and 2 together. Thank you. Thank you. I struggled with social issues as well. Before, everybody was like me in the Bronx. Now nobody was like me at this school. As an adult, looking back at my education, I examined what my own culture might have had on the effect of my education. I was raised in an environment where you didn't ask an adult a question. It was considered disrespectful. And you didn't look an adult in the eye. I can't tell you how many teachers said to me, "Look at me when I'm talking to you." And I'd say, "I can't. My mother told me I can't look at you. I'll be disrespectful." But I was 10 years old before I realized you could ask a teacher a question. He was teaching us long division, and I couldn't figure out where he got the number 2. Finally, it burst out of my mouth. I couldn't wait. I said, "Where'd you get the number 2?" And he said, "I got it from the thing." And he slapped the board with his chalk, and the chalk broke. And I thought, wow, this is remarkable. I ask a question, and he gives me the answer. What a concept. I didn't know you could do that with an adult. And I didn't get sent to the principal's office like I thought. I didn't get a lifetime demerit like they accused us of if we got out of line. And I suppose being a nice little obedient, quiet girl was an attractive trait in old school Puerto Rico, but it doesn't get you anywhere in the United States. Anyway, I have a better story to tell you about that. Anybody see the movie Real Women Have Curves? America Ferrera's movie, first movie. It's about this Mexican-American family on the West Coast. Their daughter gets a full scholarship to Columbia University, and they don't want her to go because it's too far from home, and she's a girl. Well, it was a hilarious movie, heartwarming, and I left thinking, but that can't happen. What family doesn't want their kid to go to Columbia University free? Well, the next month, I was asked to give a talk in Brownsville, Texas, to families struggling with that very thing. They were so closely knit, they could not let their daughters go to the next town to get a good internship or the next state to participate in college. And you could say that their strong cultural family values them might keep them from succeeding in America. I met grown women there who said, oh man, I wanted to get my PhD. I went, oh, well, why didn't you? You got so far. Why didn't you go for your PhD? She said, well, I couldn't leave my mother. I said, oh, your mother was sick? No, just couldn't leave her. So that's something we have to take into consideration when we educate women and girls, the whole culture, the whole schmagegi of what's going on with them. Anyway, it was time for me to go to college. I had a C average. What was I going to do? And it was a challenge. I wasn't recommended by my teachers because obviously I had a C average. So I went and applied to colleges behind the guidance counselors' backs. And I want to direct that to the young girls and the young women in the room that I spoke to earlier today. It's okay to travel a curvy path. The college professor, the college guidance counselor did not recommend me for college because my grades weren't up to par. So I just didn't say, well, I can't go. I decided to circumvent her decision and apply on my own. My mother used to say, si no te sale por una manera, te sale por la otra. If it doesn't turn out this way, try it this way. I mean, look at it from another angle. And I want to make that as clear as I can to the young girls in this audience, that it's not often a straight path. I do this, I get this, I get this. That often you have to pivot and turn on a dime. So I knew the only way to get to college was to audition, so I only tried out for schools that auditioned people. It wasn't because I had such a fever about acting. I just figured if I went like this, they wouldn't look at my grades so closely. I got into 2 colleges, Carnegie Mellon University and Hofstra University, and I took Carnegie because it was away from home. And I got there just in time. I got to Carnegie Mellon just in time to see Sesame Street on the screen and to be in a show called Godspell, which put me back in New York, and I got to be cast on Sesame Street. So here I was. was given the opportunity to be what I needed to see on television when I was growing up, but I wanted to know, how should I be? How should Maria be? And I think my political awakening helped me figure out. And I owe my political awakening, or my awareness to the world bigger than me, to a group called the Young Lords. Any Young Lords here? Palante. They were a young community activist group who worked in what then it was called Spanish Harlem, in El Barrio. And I want to also tell you about these people with a caveat. At that time, the Young Lords were considered revolutionary. Now there are streets named after them in the community. I'll show you some pictures of them that inspired me writing the book. There they marching and making their presence known in the community. Next picture, please. I'll just show you these quickly. I think you might be interested in them. There's I love that woman's pants. She's so happy, and you know, everybody's cheering the community. This was such a depressed community at that time, but she's bringing life to these people. And there's another woman marching. They seem to have a lot of parades and a lot of celebrations. At that time, mostly changes were made by African American groups and the civil rights movement and young white anti-establishment students who took over their campuses. There were no Latinx people doing it, but the Young Lords were the first time. And there they are, their list of demands. You could see how young they are because they say, you know, free Puerto Rico. Puerto Rico should be a country of itself, and give oatmeal to all the children. I mean, it's like only the young could put those two demands on the same platform. Next picture, please. Here, that's Juan Gonzalez, who became a journalist for the Daily News for many years, trying to inspire an elder. And here he's being scolded by an elder for something or other. There's more pictures of them. They were young, idealistic. That's Felipe Luciano, the famous poet. Anyway, they cleaned the women of the young lords. That was a very big thing because Puerto Rican was at that time very macho culture, and the women had to get in to also make their presence known, and they did. Their food drives, they were really involved in the community. So that's taking clothes. Then the feeding kids picture is the next picture. Yeah, that's finally got took over the church and gave everybody oatmeal as they wanted. That's a very determined little boy. And the next picture is my last and final one that this little boy is so excited. So it does start off with the youth. Anyway, they made a lot of impact in the community, but the most important thing to me is that they made all things Puerto Rican beautiful. Suddenly I wanted to know more about my culture. I wanted to know about my parents, where they came from. I was interested in the migration story and why they left and how they left and all of those kind of details. And all of a sudden, Maria became clear to me. Just be myself on Sesame Street. This taught me that it wasn't about overcoming a miserable childhood to be something. It was embracing that childhood and never forgetting myself as that miserable kid watching television, looking for someone who looked like me. That's what led me to understand what I needed to do. And that's another point that I make to the young women this morning. It's better to use who you are and what you think and what you already know to help you achieve your goals than thinking it's about, getting out of your neighborhood and getting in another world. You already know things. You've already experienced things that nobody knows. So, as a famous writer said, you might as well be yourself because everybody else is taken. On Sesame Street, I quickly realized that the power lay behind the camera, where the writers were. I had questions about the Latino content on the show. And finally, a producer said to me, why don't you try writing some of this material yourself if you have trouble with it? So I started to write scripts, and that led to writing books. I can't give a talk, of course, without talking about diversity. I'm not so naive to think racism didn't exist in America. Of course, I knew it did, and I knew it continued to live even after Sesame Street. But in my heart, I didn't realize the insidiousness of it. I didn't realize we hadn't made the leaps and bounds that I had expected when I lived through the civil rights movement. Probably everybody in this room has been affected with the events of the past 4 years. First, the election that divided the country. George Floyd was murdered, the storming of the Capitol. You can rest assured that young people know what's going on. The very young, the children I deal with, they know what's going on. Because I remember watching the bus boycotts on television when I was a little kid, and with my very light-skinned cousin, and I was afraid that if we were in the South and we would get on a bus, I would have to sit in the back and he would have to sit in the front, and then I wouldn't know where to get off. I mean, these are the things that kids think of. So what's going on today affects kids. I remember being an 11-year-old kid and saying to my friend I wanted to be a ballerina, whispering, I want to be a ballerina, but I never saw a dark one. And she said, you could be the first one. But here's the thing, we whispered even though we were alone because it was so taboo to even think it. Those are the things that I remember. Kids pick up information by omission. I used to love Gunsmoke, but where are those Native Americans today? What happened to them? Are they going to come to the Bronx? I mean, I did think of that, and kids do think of that today. They learn by omission. I wasn't taught many things in school, not taught about Native Americans I didn't know that after the Civil War and Reconstruction, there were numerous black senators and congressmen and leaders. I didn't know about the Oklahoma Massacre. I didn't know about famous women who were soldiers and movers and activists. I have always found that the more diverse a decision-making group, the better its solution. I volunteered for a group for a while called the Bronx River Alliance. It connects the poorest neighborhood in the United States, the South Bronx, the one I was raised in, with the richest, Westchester County. Everybody wants to clean the river. So when we get together, you can imagine how different the people are. There's rich matrons, there's poor people, there's black people, there's white people, there's old people, young people, everybody. But we all have one issue in mind, and that is cleaning up the Bronx River. And because we're so different, we could look at a problem from different angles, and we come up with different solutions. If everybody's the same solving a problem, you're only going to come up with the one solution. So the more diverse your group is, you will find solutions faster, and better. And you won't have to be focusing on whether you like each other or not. You'll only be focusing on what you have to deal with. I hope I haven't painted a hopeless picture, because I'm full of hope. I can't stress enough the importance of teachers and mentors and organizations like the this organization, the YWCA, are in young people's lives. I heard former Secretary of Education, Dr. John King, talk about school as a sanctuary and adults as a sanctuary. And his father was a widower who had early onset Alzheimer's before that was even diagnosed. And he said, my father would wake us up at 3 o'clock in the morning and get us ready for school. And it wasn't for teachers and organizations and the Ys that he went to that could take care of him that he was able to get through that horrible time. I remember teachers who made an impact on me. Mr. Gitterman said to me, your mother should read to you. And I said that to my mother. My mother said, what? Don't I got enough to do? Tell her we don't have any books. I said, Mr. Gitterman, we don't have any books. He said, tell her she should tell you stories of her life. Well, there began a whole series of her telling me about Puerto Rico and being an orphan and losing her mother and, crossing bullpens to see her sister on Christmas. I all of a sudden knew my mother. I saw that she was brave and strong and could do all of these things. I also understood why she painted the bathroom turquoise and the kitchen hot pink. When I realized that she came from a different weather environment than I had ever known. So I appreciate that teacher. I appreciate the teacher who took me to see West Side Story, the first one. When she just did it just to do me a favor. Now a teacher has to go to the courts to take a kid to the movies. She just had to ask my mother, and I saw this movie, and I almost had a nervous breakdown because of the first time I saw my neighborhood exalted and beautified. All of a sudden, the fire escape was like, oh, this is beautiful. The schoolyard fence was like a Matisse, so it was art. It was like when we go to the museum and we see an impressionist painter of a painting of rotting flowers. Well, we all have rotting flowers in our lives. Why do we go see his over and over and over? Because he's made it beautiful, and that's what that movie did for my neighborhood. And I understood what art was. It's taking the banal and exalting it. And of course, I remember the teacher who told me about the High School of Performing Arts. So, as educators and helpers of the young, we don't have to despair, because they bring stuff to the table themselves. You just have to point them in the right direction. Young people have answers too, because of the way they see themselves. They're resilient. They give us strength. Education is a two-way street. You learn from them even as you teach them. Guide them, but realize that they're born with their own sets of characteristics. Many people praise me for being the first Latina on television, and I know I'm really a fabulous person, okay? I won't be falsely modest. I'm happy to have that distinction. But something Michelle Obama's mother said, Mrs. Robinson, stayed with me. A journalist went up to her and said, Mrs. Robinson, you must be so proud of your children, Michelle and Craig. And she said, oh, yes, I'm very proud of them. But there were lots of kids like them in the South Side of Chicago. And that stayed with me because it makes me realize that I might have been the first, but I wasn't the only one capable. There were other kids that were capable in other ways. Maybe I was standing in the right place at the right time. Who knows? You know, the stars were aligned. So I don't like the feeling that kids think there's only one capable because that's the one who made it. There are many capables. Two more thoughts, and then I'll get off the stage. Everybody has power. When I was on Sesame Street, Matt Robinson first got there, who was the original Gordon, came up to me and he says, "You're not supposed to be the cute Latina, you know. You got to make sure the Latino content is right." I went, "Who elected me president of Puerto Ricans? I don't know." Gee whiz, I don't know. But then his thought stayed with me, and there was a fruit cart on the show, and it had bananas and apples and whatever. And I thought to myself, you know, if this was a real diverse neighborhood, it would have piña, plátano, yautía, you know, tropical fruit that was in my neighborhood as a kid. I went up to the producer and I said, could we have some plátanos on the fruit cart? They said, oh, what a great idea. So I had a little bit of power, and I used it. I mean, use it as much as you can. So I'm telling these young women that I spoke to, you have a little power in your neighborhood, whether it's reading to a little kid, that's giving you power. Use it because you do have it. And then I'll leave you with this. I diversified the first fruit cart on television. No, I'm not going to leave you with that silly thought. I'll leave you with this one. As a child, I remember singing in class the Pledge of Allegiance. And my heart, I would sing, and I with tears would come into my eyes, and I'd feel so proud that I was an American, but the thing is so funny, I felt this even as I felt the disdain of the teachers because I was poor and brown. I still felt it. I don't know, I kind of felt, well, they, you know. I still feel proud to be an American, and I think that that is instilled in us, and I think that that gives me hope, and know that as educators and people who deal with the young, you don't have to carry them the whole weight. They're capable. You just have to point them in the right direction. And as confusing as our country is now, I believe we'll find our balance. And I have hope that we will continue to be who we really are. Thank you so much for inviting me. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome to the stage YWCA Hartford Region Board Chair, Andrea Barton-Reeves.
Maybe I can, there you go. Being heard is usually not one of my issues, so that was a little disconcerting. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Andrea Barton-Reeves, and I do have the distinct privilege and honor of being the board chair of the YWCA Hartford Region. I am so excited and so thrilled to be in this room. And Sonia, thank you so much for sharing who you are as a woman. You are inspiring. I learned so much about you. I actually had read so much about you, but then you're incredible. And we're so honored to have you here this afternoon. So thank you so much. So before I forget, Senator Derek Slapp was here earlier, and I know we didn't have an opportunity to acknowledge him, so I just wanted to do that before we went on this afternoon. So thank you, Senator, for attending this afternoon. I'd also like to thank Keisha Grant. Ms. Grant, we are so grateful. You come time and again, you rearrange your schedules, you make it possible, and thank you for bringing grace and beauty and dignity to this event. So thank you very much for being here. And we are here today to celebrate those that work at our Early Learning Center. So once again, please join me in giving them a huge round of applause for being heroes during the pandemic, for taking care of our children, for making sure that they continue to learn even under the most challenging of circumstances, for making sacrifices for being away for their own families so that our families could have an opportunity to work. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And as a different note, these are the women you want taking care of your children. I tried to get in that door over there, and they were standing in front of the door and would not let me in. I had to have someone come vouch for me to get in the room. So these are the women that you really want standing in the stead and making sure that your families are safe. And I am honored to serve as board chair, and I serve with a very powerful board of directors. So I'm going to ask them to raise their hands or stand because they do extraordinary work. And I appreciate all of the work that we do together to help realize this organization's mission, its vision, and its goals in support of programs and services that help to advance the lives of women and girls in Greater Hartford. So if I could ask my board members, my fellow board members, to please stand and be acknowledged this afternoon. And of course, we would not be who we are without the extraordinary leadership of Adrienne Cochran. Yes, please, this is an important month for Adrienne because 4 years ago this month, she agreed to join the YWCA Hartford region as its leader. She has been and remains a catalyst for change in very uncertain times. She has led with remarkable courage through times that we could not have imagined in a pandemic. She has guided our staff to be more creative and innovative, and she's positioning us to be more visible and more powerful and leading us certainly in the right direction toward a future of hope, every day. So Adrienne, I thank you for your leadership and your service. And on behalf of the board of directors, we are extraordinarily proud of you and all that you've done to make the YWCA Hartford region the organization that it is. So to all of our sponsors and our table captains and all of you who purchased a ticket today, as Adrienne began, we're here. We're finally back in person. And I tried to make it to some of your tables. I didn't make it to all of them because there are a lot of them. And we know that there are years when there were more, but thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for the table captains and all of you that purchased a ticket. We really appreciate your support and your coming out and being here in person with us today. I also would like to thank the staff at the YWCA who made this day possible. There was a team that worked countless hours, days, nights, weekends, overnight, to make sure that every detail was attended to so that this day would be a success. The entire staff volunteered today to make sure that this day was meaningful, and staff, you delivered. So I'd like to thank in particular Sharon Bellinger, Leah Flanagan, Melinda Johnson, Carol Jimenez, and Yvonne Davis of Yvonne Davis Communications, and all of the volunteers, all of them who made today possible. If you could join me in a round of applause for everyone. So you heard me speak earlier of Adrienne's leadership and how extraordinary it is and what she's done to really transform the organization. She has done this in several ways, and one of which is that she allowed us to join the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving's program that allowed us to start a social enterprise. We are so grateful to the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving because they chose us as one of 6 organizations that will help us to build a business. So if you're not familiar with what a social enterprise is, it is indeed an opportunity for a not-for-profit entity to build a for-profit business that can fund its mission. And we have done that, and we want to thank the Hartford Foundation for Public Giving for giving us the opportunity to do that and to continue to support us in a 30-month process to build our business. And what might it be, you ask? Well, that business is known as Persimmon Petals, Flowers That Empower. So last month, we introduced Persimmon Petals, Flowers That Empower, and you may ask why flowers? Well, we know several things. We know that businesses and individuals want to use their purchasing power for social good and social impact and community reinvestment. We also know that COVID-19 has disproportionately affected women in the workforce. And we know that now women are reimagining their career paths through entrepreneurial endeavors, and there is a need for skill development for women, and this presents a special opportunity for women to work their way into independence. So we recently met with a number of business owners and sponsors. We presented our financial and business plan to them, and we asked them to help us secure the initial financial funding to make Persimmon Petals a reality. And they were extremely generous. They have stepped forward to begin. And I would like to thank, as a start, our friend, Joanne Price and James Price. So Joanne Price, yes. The Hartford Foundation for Public Giving provided an opportunity to give us at least, each one of the 6 organizations, at least $20,000, up to $20,000 in a matching grant if we could find matching funds. Joanne and James matched the entire amount themselves. And we are so incredibly grateful. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. There are a number of other people here today who also stepped up and were extremely generous and believe in the work that we're doing at the YWCA and are supporting our social enterprise. And they include Virgil and Diane Blondette, Susan Dunn, Janice Fleming, Paula Gilberto, Howard K. Hill, Brewster and Judith Perkins, Philomena Soyster, Peggy Strange, Stacy Walsh, and Kristen Wisensee. We want to thank you for believing in the work that we're doing and supporting the work that we do to enhance the vision and the lives of women and girls. And we will report back to you how we're doing with Persimmon Petals. We're at the place where we're going to be executing our business plan, and we're excited to let you know about our progress. Their gifts helped us to raise about 1/3 of what we need, and again, those proceeds will go to supporting our mission for women and girls. And we invite you to learn more about Persimmon Petals out in our Persimmon Plaza. At our YWCA table, you'll be able to get more information about what we did. Also, if you've placed a bid on any silent auction items or you've made any purchases, just make sure you can see if there's anything out there that you might want to have. Lastly, when Keisha began, she told you that we were trying to raise $25,000 this evening, and we already had 10 that were raised. As of right now, we have over $23,000. Thank you so much for your generosity and your support. We only need 2,000 more to make our goal this afternoon, so I know I can count on you. You can text, you can visit our webpage, you can fill out the forms that are on the table. Your generosity has made the YWLC, the YWCA of Hartford Region, an outstanding organization in this region and continues to help us to really advance the lives of women and girls. So I thank you for being here this afternoon. Thank you for being here for the first time in 2 years in person. And I invite you to join us again next year. We will do it all again, bigger, better, and I hope you'll be here to join us. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, on behalf of Adrian Cochran, the Board of Directors, and the entire YWCA Hartford Region leadership and staff, we thank you for your support and for spending a wonderful afternoon with us. Have a great rest of your day, and we look forward to seeing you next April.
Feeling like you're stuck in a